Nick Thompson, dude, so good to meet you.
It's great to meet you too, outside of a
Yes.
couple DMs.
Yeah, I work as a matchmaker, date coach. I'm a wedding officiant. It's what I do full
I
time.
saw that, yeah.
And because of that, I was fascinated when I saw on Netflix Love is Blind. I thought, love's not blind. I'm like, love's not truly blind. And so I started watching it just really for educational, therapeutic purposes and to help people.
hmm
And anyway, so I saw you on there, and then had seen some things later, and I thought, man, I'm going to hit Nick up and see if he'd be willing to come on my podcast and talk about it. So I guess first, yeah, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, but then I want to get into the whole Netflix experience.
Yeah, and I want to get into some dating advice. So,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
yeah, my name is Nick. I was on season 2 of Love is Blind, which is funny because that's what everybody knows me from for the most part outside of my circle, right? But it's one of the things I look at as something that I did, not who I am. So it's like a weird clash thing there for me. But my professionally, I'm a marketing executive. I work in software. I have been a pretty intensely advocate more recently in the last year or so, talking about the exploitation that I and many of my cast members and my season and other seasons have experienced. So I have a foundation called the UCAN Foundation, which is the Unscripted Cast Advocacy Network that I started with Isabel Morley, who's a psychologist, Dr. Isabel Morley, and Jeremy Hartwell. And that is a new adventure over the last year to help advocate for change in the reality TV industry, but then also to ensure cast members get mental health and legal support when they need it, because we all sign very predatory contracts and stuff. So I have a little bit of my advocacy work there. And then I also host my own podcast called Eyes Wide Open, which you can find on YouTube or anywhere as well. And we talk about um, uh, pretty much whatever's on my mind and I'm curious about. I go find an expert to talk to me about it,
Yeah.
which is like a realization that I just had recently. I'm like, I really just have a thought, and then I'm like, I got to find someone to come talk about this. But we talk about mental health, holistic wellness, reality TV, of course, in some instances, but more so what's going on in the industry and what people's experience has been versus gossiping, because I don't really care to do that. And we
Yeah.
also talk about other society issues and culture and free speech and basically whatever's on my mind at that given time
Yeah.
or when I get an opportunity to talk to someone. So yeah, I've
Yeah.
got a lot of I guess irons in the fire there, but that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, so I have so many different questions. One of the questions I had is how has your life changed, pre or before Netflix, or Love is Blind, and now after?
So there's been several transitions. Like I had said beforehand, it was, and I was on. It was we filmed in 2021. It aired in 2022. Before that, I was just a normal person. I didn't have desires to, get 15 minutes of fame or anything like that. I traditionally like kept my life pretty small, keep to myself. I'm a private person for the most part. I joke, I say I had 6 friends, and that was my circle. Like I didn't leave
Yeah.
it. I didn't see much outside of it, and that was working for me. And what wasn't working for me in 2021, COVID was still doing its thing, and I had just really had dating experiences that were just COVID made them go even more off the chains than they were
That was a difficult
beforehand.
time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I remember God bless her, but she didn't want to go on a date unless you had COVID tested that day. And I'm like, okay. And this was 2020. Like you couldn't just get a test. It was like
Right.
a
Right.
process. Like I'm going to go to the hospital or the immediate care or I'm in Chicago, out in the suburbs
Yeah.
to go pull up like it just wasn't a feasible thing. So dating was awful. And I actually received a note on LinkedIn, which is where I was most active on social media, given my career and my expertise in marketing. And it was November 30th, 2020, saying, hey, I'm casting for Love is Blind. Are you interested? I never really consumed reality TV very much before. I had heard of the show, had no idea about the show. And so all right, I'll take this call. Let's see. And then, next thing I know, 5-6 months later, I'm there. And I remember my naivete was in full swing. And I thought, I'm like, oh, reality shows are a dime a dozen, blah, 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 blah. Like, I wouldn't recognize the majority of people that have been on them, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Like, my mindset is, if I go there and I happen to meet someone and it happens to work out, that's great. If I go there the first day and I'm like, I don't like any of these people, that's great too. I'm happy to go home. And I think that was a good mindset to have, but that naivete showed itself when when the show was coming out, and I decided to tell my manager, I'm like, hey, just so you know, this little show's coming out, and I was on it a year ago, and all that. And she's like, wait, what? And she didn't watch reality TV either, and she's like, well, let's just let HR know so that something's going on. I'm like, there's nothing bad. I didn't do or say anything bad. There's nothing. It's not going to be a bad reflection. And we told HR, who did know what the show was, and she was basically like, STFU, like, shut up. There's no way.
Yeah.
And then I started to realize, I'm like, oh. And then the day they announced the cast, which is like two, maybe 3 weeks before the show drops, I went from like 348 followers on Instagram to 7,000 by the time I woke up that day. And so it was just like, whoa. And then you have these 3 weeks when the show is just dropping every week and a couple episodes here, a couple episodes there. Everybody's speculating, talking. You cannot be seen in public with the cast, with your partner, with anyone. So, you're trying to navigate this. My whole life is changing. Yeah. And I can't even go in public with my wife, and a lot of my, extended friends and family had no idea because you can't tell anyone, right? And
so how'd they think you met her? How'd they think that you met Danielle?
So it's so interesting because it really depended. So the extended family people I didn't really talk to and stuff like that, they just didn't know about the marriage piece, right? And same with work. It was like, oh, I got this new girlfriend kind of thing. That was the whole thing. And you're towing this line and you're kind of lying and you feel like I feel guilt about it. And I would kind of stretch truths about it and try to dance around it.
Sure.
But, you can't understand like how crazy that is. Right. And even anyone who comes to your wedding signs an NDA. So they can't tell anyone either, technically.
So their phones are taken. They just have to just observe and.
Yeah. Phones are taken, kept away from people. It's a pretty intense experience. And so as your life is changing and you're just gathering these followers, and then the first episodes drop, and all of a sudden that morning you wake up and now people know, because they watch like 3 or 4 of them, they know who the main cast is. So it's like, boom, 150,000 followers. Everybody watching your every move, your every post, everything about you. They're trying to figure out who's together. They went through Danielle and my Venmo transactions, and we're trying to see who paid. If we paid anyone, we got a note from Netflix. Yeah. Netflix is like, everyone needs to make their Venmos private. And then the speculation, it's like, Danielle had drinks with her girlfriend. Were they drinks because sorrow drinks from a breakup? Like, these are the articles and the things people are speculating on. And it's just like, everything you do is under scrutiny and everybody recognizes you. Like, I couldn't go anywhere, which is fine. I enjoy it. It makes people's day, right? So I don't mind. Sure. But it's like, go to the grocery store, get stopped 10 times. Go to the gym, and it was like impossible to work out. And the
fame. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no.
So the fame, what you were talking about, the naivete, being naive, was it that you didn't think that many people watched the show, but you were wrong?
Yeah, I would say that's what it was. And I remember the week it aired on a Friday at first. I come in Monday to work, and I have one of my, I love her, name's Steph. I loved working with her. Her boss, she hijacked her boss in my one-on-one meeting, and because she watched the show and she just couldn't believe that I was on it. And that's aside from like the followers and stuff, I'm like, that was when I was like, holy shit, people like live for this show. People really enjoy the show. And my naivete, it was like, I could name maybe one or two bachelors. There's been like 50 of them, right? So you're just
Right.
not thinking. And I wasn't a big consumer of reality TV. I'm still not.
Yeah, me
And I
either.
just
Yeah.
had no idea. I just had no idea that it was this popular.
Hmm.
So that's the part
That's
that's really,
wild.
yeah, it's really challenging. And then not challenging, I would say it's culture shock, right? You're
Yeah.
just like, holy cow. I don't know if I can swear, but I would have said the shit. But the
Yeah.
scrutiny you're under is just absolutely crazy. And the part that was really, there's two parts that were kind of difficult for me. One was I didn't take it like the way people reacted, the way people were in your every move, the Reddit threads or whatever was out there. I don't go on Reddit, but I hear
Yeah.
about it from other people. And it's just, to me it was just so surprising. Like I had to laugh at how serious people take it. Now
Yeah.
it was serious for me. Like I obviously went on and got married, right? I took it very
Right.
seriously as like I
Right.
didn't go there for clout. I took it as I'm going to see if this relationship can work, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, like there was that element, but the non-seriousness that people kind of view it with, but also with seriousness because they're very mean to people. But
Which is
I was just
unfortunate.
like, I know it is unfortunate. I was just really surprised by how invested people get in it. That's probably a better way to put it. How
Yeah.
invested people get in it. And I had to laugh because I'm like, I don't think and I'd enjoy it for entertainment, but I don't think I would care about every little move that somebody makes. And that was
Right.
the part that was so hard. And also, it does impact your friends and family in a way that I didn't really think going through. And I was very careful, like on the show, not to mention people that they always want you to talk about your past relationships and stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to name people because I don't want to, I don't want to put someone in a position they don't want to be in because I signed up for something. So like even
Absolutely.
that part of it. And then, people were very kind of cruel to my family over some of the stuff. And it wasn't just like Danielle too. They were cruel to Danielle. They were cruel to her family. Lots of support as well. But, you don't really sign other people up for it, right? You sign yourself up for it. So I think that was another
Sure.
big thing that was interesting to navigate. I remember probably about a year ago, I had a friend in town and a bunch of my friends, we went out to brunch. We were having day drinks. We went to, I call these, there's certain places I call the demo, which is the demographic that's going to know and want to talk, right? It's the 20 somethings.
Yes.
They're the ones that are going to be like, very excited to come talk to you. So there's just times I'd like go out with my friends and it would be like one person and then the floodgates are open and then everyone's coming to wanting pictures. And before you know it, I've spent 30 minutes talking to people and, my friends signed up to hang out with me, not to watch me interact with strangers. So it's like things like that are the
Absolutely.
things you don't really think about and kind of how your life changes in a way you wouldn't anticipate, no matter the size or success of the show.
Right. So you weren't, so that was one of the things that I was telling my wife as we were watching it. Really, again, I'm like you. I hate reality TV if I'm honest. It's something I
Me
just don't
too.
just I yeah, I've never been a consumer of reality TV. Though Love is Blind I do watch, and I just finally watched The Golden Bachelor,
Okay.
and then the current one, and only because, and I say this not to justify watching reality TV. My For me, it's just I learn so much about
Mm-hmm.
how people interact, how just it's a learning experience, and it's
Mm-hmm.
fascinating to watch people try to hide. And then I think the show just puts enough pressure in you and gives you enough alcohol that your true colors are eventually they're going to catch it on camera. And the problem is I feel like people are being exploited, and that's another reason why I think how I found you is
Mm-hmm.
I found that I was like, man, I wonder
Something's
how
not
much
right.
editing, yeah, like are they making sure to edit it in such a way that this guy looks like a buffoon or this woman looks
Yes,
crazy and
they are.
over emotional? Like, if are they like even in the recent Love Is Blind, it was like they filmed this one guy just always on his phone, and I thought, I wonder if he's really on his phone like the entire time, or if they're just making sure to get lots of clips with him on his phone and then showing those to give the impression that
Yeah.
he is on his phone too much. So, I mean, when it comes to editing, do you feel like sometimes it's pretty fair and honest revealing, or do you think that they're leaning into, oh, okay, let's lean into
Right.
this craziness?
So I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I also want to know why you don't like reality TV. So we'll get to that too.
Yeah.
But I think it all depends. At the very least, I would say context is king in everything we
Mm,
do in real life. And when you watch reality TV, you're not getting a lot of the context. And
got
so,
you.
to your point, when you see someone on their phone, and I've had actually guests on my podcast from other shows who have said, "Hey, this happened to me." They told me to call my fiance, for example, and then they used that clip to make it look like I was doing it 5 times a day. And so
Yeah.
it's like they do those things because there's a narrative that they're trying to tell. But at the same time, I also think there are people who get, a more accurate representation. But what I like to say is I was in 10 episodes and then another 3 for After the Altar, right? I think
Hmm.
maybe the reunion, I don't remember. But there was about an hour and 14 minutes if you were to just take Nick and Danielle and put us together. And you
Yeah.
think about the fact that when we were in the pods, we were talking not just to each other, but like we were all there 18, 20 hours a day talking.
Right.
And you're seeing a minute and 30-second clip. By the end, Danielle and I were talking the end of the pods because you weave people out, right? So you
Right.
you rank and you get small and you start spending more time on them. We were probably talking 5, 6 hours a day total, spread out over the day
Wow.
by the
Because
end.
it's like speed dating. So I run speed dating events, and
Oh,
I just had a big speed dating event here in Kansas City. We had 16 guys, 16 girls, and it's the same concept, except obviously it's not
yes.
blind. They're sitting across from each other at a table, and you get 5 minutes, right? And then you move to the next person, next person, next person, and then I do a mixer afterwards to where whoever you kind of connected with afterwards, you just have free time to kind of hang out and get to
That's
know,
cool.
and it's kind of like what you're talking about. It's kind of narrow it down. So the concept was very familiar to me, which we'll talk more about the blind part, because
Yeah.
that's where I was so curious, because I do not believe love is blind. I think it's
It can
blurry.
be. I think it
Yeah,
can. Oh, don't say
it
blurry.
can.
You're going to sound like Shake. I don't know if you remember.
It's I don't remember that, but for me it's like, for me personally, like, yes, looks are important, but they're not the most important thing. If I'm not compatible with someone, I don't care if I'm hot in the pants for them. That just might mean I'm gonna have a good time tonight, or I'm gonna have a good time for a little bit. But that doesn't mean I can spend my life with this person day in and day out, on and on. So it the
And that's
most
what I think
important
the
is
challenge
compatibility.
is. Yeah, that's what I
Yes.
think. So here's the challenge. And I thought of one more thing I wanted to say about editing too, really quickly. When you think about watching these shows, I encourage people to remember we all sign contracts that they can misrepresent us, they can defame us, they can tell whatever story they want about us, and we can't have any recourse. Now, reading that, and I read the contract, not everyone reads the contract. I read the contract, and I needed some amendments made because of my job, and I public speak for my job, and they own all of that in this contract.
Yeah.
They own every interview you do, so I needed like amendments on that. But I read that and I'm like, oh, well, I have a good value system. Like, I'm a good guy. I'm not going to do anything out of character. Like, I don't need to worry about that. And again, I would say I didn't get a bad edit, but there's a lot of things I watch. I'm like, well, that didn't happen exactly like that. Or
Yeah.
there's no context to why I said or did that. And same with my relationship. Like, my relationship was depicted from, halfway on to just be this like explosive thing. And they just left out all of the fun stuff or added dramatic music to a tongue-in-cheek conversation that we were forced to have that we didn't want to have, and make it
Yeah.
look like it's, so there's these types of little manipulations that go on, but then there's the big ones too, where you have scenes that are edited out of order, and they're edited out of order to make it look like somebody cheated or was unfaithful.
Yes.
Yes, and that happened to Jackie Bonds 2 seasons ago, where they edited her breaking up with someone after she told another person that she had feelings for them, and she was
I
getting death
remember
threats.
that.
Yeah, she couldn't go to the reunion because there were death threats, and it's like that's
Wow.
literally because they showed her doing something that she had done the day before, after.
Yeah.
And so those things are going on, and there's a lot of that going on this season too. That just had the reunion 2 days ago. There's a lot
Yes.
going on there. And I remind people, like, first, you don't have the context. Second, you don't even know if what you're seeing is an accurate depiction of the timeline of events of what you are
Right.
seeing. And so show people grace, but also realize they technically legally, cannot speak out against the edit, or they're subject to millions of dollars in fines.
See,
So
that's just fascinating because in the real world, I guess for me, I understand. I'm like, okay, I know these are uh, supposed to be reality people, but in a sense, I'm like, no, they're actors and they're playing a role, and the edits are making that role so. They're
yes,
making this person out to be the villain. They're making this person out to be crazy. They're making this person out to be just nearly perfect. Whatever it is, you know, I'm almost 55, so I mean I've been around a little long enough to go. This I don't think
something's
that this
off.
person is. Yeah, like this guy's probably not an asshole, or this girl's probably not as crazy as they're making her out to seem. So I would. So when people go crazy, the fans and they're sending hate messages and death threats, it's just like, really, come on, you think this is real?
Right.
Like fully real? Like, come on.
Well, that's the part that's so fascinating to me, because even having lived through it and having lived through, again, I think Danielle was misrepresented. And I think that she was, I just know the damage that did to her, and the things that they made her talk about behind closed doors, and the way they leveraged things about her. And they did to me too. Like, one of the hardest things for me to come to terms with was the manipulation of this whole situation, which I'll touch on for your other
Yeah.
question. But I think with the editing, I right now have been partnered up with moveon.org, and we have a petition, moveon.org/reality, and we have 32,000 signatures already. And the goal of this is just to put a petition, or I'm sorry, put why am I blanking? My brain just went, put a,
Well, to misrepresent people, if you're being
right.
misrepresented out in the real world, I can imagine that some people regret ever doing the show, and it it it's trying to ruin their lives. Now, eventually, over time, people forget and they're on to a new season and on to new characters. But man, it can really fuck your
It
life up.
It really can. And it's a disclaimer is the word I was looking for. A disclaimer at the beginning of all the shows saying this is for entertainment purposes only. Basically taking that clause in the contract where they say
Yeah,
we can do all of these things to you and putting it on the screen so that viewers get that reminder when they're watching it that it may be out of order. They may be pressured into doing something that they wouldn't do. They may have said this to somebody else, but they took the audio and put it to make this person look like an asshole. Someone may have looked at their phone thinking that they were not in any kind of engagement and then dropped that in over and over and over, right? Not to
yeah,
say that's always the case, but it's a possibility. And what I think happens with these things, and it fucked my life up, right? Like
yeah.
I went through it. I still go through it. And there's people who I have talked to through the foundation and just talked to through networking where they have lost businesses because people go and they just negative review blast their business. I have people that have had like government officials come after them because they just didn't like their edit and come after their businesses. And yeah,
Really?
yeah, it's crazy. There's and he wasn't on a show, but there's a gentleman named Dr. Kirk Honda, and I had him on my podcast. He is a psychologist in Seattle, and he's one of the early psychologists and therapists that would comment on these shows. So he's got a massive following, and he didn't just cover these shows; he covers cultural events. So he was covering the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp thing, and they went after him. They were trying to organize on Reddit to get his license revoked, all because he was commenting on a court case. And so
Wow.
people, they organize online on these places to like go after people because of what they saw on TV. And there were people too, I don't remember the specific details, but I know there were people that like were going after Danielle's family's jobs. Like,
Really?
yeah, like contacting the businesses that members of her family worked at. What is going on? So it can really, really disrupt your life. And that's also, by the way, like that's on top of everything else. You've got this newfound fame. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody's talking about you, and that's a hard thing to deal with, especially if you're misrepresented. And
Yeah.
I felt like my relationship was misrepresented, and it was frustrating at times to hear people put their opinion or projection on my relationship when they didn't live it every
Yeah.
day, right? They
Right.
didn't
Yeah.
know how much fun we had most of the time.
Yeah.
It was so it's very it's very interesting. And then the compatibility thing I wanted to touch back on. So this is the big thing I think with this show, most shows, is you are in a container, right? You are in a manufactured environment.
Yeah.
And
Not
you
real.
think, yes, exactly, not real. And when you think about what works so well in those pods, in theory, my understanding is it's not really the same anymore, and that there's pretty obviously people just going on the show to get
Famous.
famous for a few minutes. But when you're in those pods, and this is what attracted me to it, right? One of my biggest critiques of dating was that everybody's got endless options and no one takes time to get to know anyone. And that's the compatibility piece, right? You make a
Yeah.
judgment on something they said in their profile. You make a judgment on something they did or didn't do on the first date or in texting, whatever it is. You're passing judgments and you're not taking time to get to know someone and the nuances of compatibility there. When
Right.
you're in the pods, especially, and then in Mexico or wherever your trip is, all you have to do is focus on each other. So
Right.
so that's the piece I think works, right? Like I confidently know that Danielle and we actually fell in love. But when you're
Yeah.
in the pods and you're just talking to each other, and then you're in Mexico on basically a honeymoon, and
Right.
you're still filming and you're still being put in these situations that are manufactured, but like we just got to hang out without really cares in the world of work, family, relationship drama, friend drama, whatever that is, stress of work, stress of hobbies. You just
Because
really
all of that's taken care of by the show, right? Like all of those expenditures, like you guys aren't having to pay for the hotel, you're not having to pay for
no.
the canoe ride, you're not having to pay for the horsebacking excursion,
Couldn't
or
if we wanted to. They take your wallet. So
oh wow,
oh yeah,
okay,
that's one of my big frustrations and things I'm advocating against is they take your wallet, your passport, your credit cards. You get put in hotel rooms when you're not filming and you're not allowed to leave. You don't get a key. If you leave, you're in trouble. And it's all very
sounds kind
scary.
of like a loose prison.
True, true. And they take you to, I remember when we were going to Mexico, the producer hands you your passport to go through the TSA, and then they wait for you and they take it back when you get out. So now you're in Mexico. And before you go to the resort, which still being in a foreign country without your passport is scary. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's scary. And then when you're the first few days, all the guys and women were in different hotels in the middle of Cancun, like not in a resort, which is kind of
right,
crazy because what would happen if something happened?
right, right.
And that could happen anywhere, right? Like I don't want to leave my house without my ID if I get hit by a bus. You know what I mean? It's like,
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah,
so that piece is so crazy, but the whole manufactured piece of it really allows you to see if you are compatible in like this situation at the beginning where everything's removed, and then these situations where you're told what to talk about. Today you're going to go see Nick's house, tomorrow he's going to come see your house, then you're going to meet the parents and you're going to meet the friends, and you're kind of like shuffled around into these situations. And we still had time to be together, but you don't really have the time to like learn the nuances of how to live with each other.
sure,
And
sure.
those are the compatibility pieces. I think you mentioned that these shows kind of remove the ability to really learn if you're truly compatible in everyday life.
Yeah. How many people, you said that you went on pretty sincerely, or it sounds like that's what you were saying, that you genuinely went on there for the experience and to possibly meet somebody. I get the sense that not everybody's doing that. I get the sense that if if not if not fully they're there for the fame piece, they're there for majority of that, and then maybe if I'm lucky, I'll actually meet somebody. But I feel like the driving force is being on the Netflix TV series. What is that accurate or?
I think in general you're probably right. I think as more seasons come, as the show somehow continues to grow in popularity, this last season was the most watched.
But man,
Um,
it was slayed. They slayed.
I
There's a
know,
couple people that I'm like,
I know.
oh God, I hope they don't like I
Well,
hope
it's
they do
I
okay.
unfortunately think it's a matter of time, and we've already seen that happen to a few people overseas where they've taken their own life after
Oh
being
really?
put. Oh yeah, there's actually
Oh,
I don't quote me on this. I think there's over 50 reality TV cast members that have taken their lives globally.
really?
Yeah,
Now, see, then, man, I would love to be an advocate for just because I work as a relationship coach and I've been doing this for 25 years. I've been doing this a long
yeah.
time. And, for me, in fact, I would love to work with them on, hey, listen, don't read the comments. Like, like if you can, as much as you possibly can, it's like post and ghost. It's kind of, I think it's Joe
That's what I
Rogan
do
that
on.
says that.
That's what I do.
It's
Yeah.
That's what I do. That's what I do, and I'm not even famous. I mean, I'm known locally here in Kansas City just because of what I do, and I'm on
Yeah.
the TV here locally on the morning show. But it's just different. It's a whole different. No one's trying to misrepresent me, and no one's trying to. But I still have had videos where I've been told, "Oh my gosh, have you seen the comments on your?" Because I used to be very religious. I'm not religious at all anymore. So I used to be very
Me
religious.
too.
Really? Oh my gosh, dude, we got
Oh,
to talk about that a little bit too. So
yeah,
I was
yeah.
a pastor for 30 years.
Oh wow. I
Yeah,
didn't go.
man.
Well, I'm actually. What is that church that you can get ordained online?
The Unity Universal
That
Church of.
yeah. I've actually married people before. So it's,
Well, that's how I got into being a wedding officiant. I was a pastor, and so I'm doing weddings and funerals and christenings and child dedication, all this stuff. And anyway, back in 2018, I walked away from that completely.
mm,
And anyway, so in that journey, which was a very private, but I made it public, I talk about it openly. Man, I was getting, from the
oh
Christians, I
yeah.
was getting, just really bad comments, and I'm working for the
Mm,
devil now, and just, the stuff, all the stuff. I'm a
yeah.
prodigal. And I just learned early on, like, I'm not going to base my life on your opinion of me.
Right.
I have good close friends. I have a good close network, and I have a good self image, and so I don't really care what anybody says about me. But I learned I had to stop reading the comments. I
Yeah.
had to just because I'm pretty sensitive, and if I read something, it'll hurt my feelings. So I've just
Yeah.
learned I don't
I'm the
read I
same
don't read
way.
it.
I'm the same way, and I think it's. I look back at how I felt when it was happening, and I don't go on Reddit. I went on Reddit for the first time in the 2016 election, and I was like, "What the f? This place is the hell isn't Twitter. It's actually Reddit. Like,
Yeah.
Twitter is maybe purgatory, and then hell is actually Reddit." So I haven't really been on since, unless a Google search has led me there for something, and then
Yeah.
that's like I'm in and I'm out. I'm not clicking anything extra. I don't want to see it. But
Yeah.
I think that's a lot harder to do in the moment, and it is a
Sure.
learned skill. And I have a good self image. Like it's not always been that way, but like I know
Sure.
I'm doing the best I can with the tools and information that I've got, and I'm trying to do the right thing, and that's kind of my ethos. So I don't really care what people think about me, but it
Right.
kind of I'm sensitive too, and
Yeah.
it will chip away at the armor. And I remember thinking right when I realized that I was going to be like super Instagram famous and have this like 15 minutes was going to be bigger than I ever imagined.
Yeah.
Going into the show and going through it until I learned when it came out how big it was. And I remember like I listened to Joe Rogan sometimes too, and he had said, "Yeah, I can't look at the comments anymore." And that's the first time I was
Yeah.
like, "Wait, what?" Like Joe Rogan, host of Fear Factor, UFC fighter, tough
Right.
guy.
Badass.
He can't badass. He can't read the comments. I'm like, oh shit. Like, how am I? So, it's hard in the moment too. And here's the other thing too. Even for me now, like it's very hard when new season comes out because it reminds and the work I'm doing, right? It's
So you watched? You watched this last
I
season?
can't watch it. I
Oh,
can't
gotcha.
watch it because it reminds me of my marriage not working out. It reminds
Yeah.
me of all the heartache that went with that and how much they didn't care. And I was another, point of naivete for me was I thought since we were a success story, they would care. They
Yeah.
would want our relationship to be successful, and learning that they didn't care. They wouldn't have cared if we showed up to the reunion, and had a massive explosion. They probably would have preferred it. Like stuff like that,
Interesting.
and not getting support as a couple that I felt like they owed us and offered us and didn't deliver on. Those types of things.
So there's no. I'm sorry, Nick. Is there? So there's no counselors on hand on set. There's no matchmakers on set. Is that
So
all behind the scenes on selection? Because as a matchmaker, I'm looking at everybody, and I don't believe I believe everybody's beautiful and there's a match for everybody and all that stuff.
yeah.
But I'm looking at everybody. I'm like, okay, everybody here's fairly attractive. Meaning, there's not, and I don't know how else to say this, but there's not like Danny DeVito and then and then Brad Pitt, right?
Right.
Like they're all kind of roughly good looking within variations. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like I feel
Yeah,
like
I agree.
everybody is somewhat compatible-ish. They all probably, hopefully, have jobs. They all, as much as they know, right? I keep going like
Right.
this because that's the
Air
assumption.
quotes.
Yeah, air quotes. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, all these guys look fairly sharp. They dress well. They probably have jobs. All the women, they look fairly sharp, fairly yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And so clearly they're going to find matches in there because of the way it's all been casted.
And you're in a vacuum. That's all you got.
Right. Yeah, this is that. Yeah, there's only however many they start out. Was it 12 and 12? I forget.
15 and 15.
15 and 15.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 15 and 15, they're roughly going to have some connections. And I would even imagine that behind the scenes, they're thinking, oh, you know what? I think Nick could possibly be with Danielle, or maybe so-and-so, and I'm guessing, but I would imagine they're kind of thinking, okay, Nick can be compatible with Danielle, this person, and this person. Jack can be da-da-da-da-da. Okay, throw them in there. Let's see what happens.
So I can only speculate based on things that I've heard from people in our production and in other productions on that. So just to be clear, this is kind of my speculation, more or less.
Sure.
But the way it's sold to you, or is sold to us, and I actually think they sell it differently to different people. No proof on that either. But I think like when they're assessing you and they're doing psych evals and they tell you like we have matchmakers that like find people that we think would have some compatibility. I don't believe that to be true.
Yeah.
I believe that they get all of this information and then they're casting to characters that they've predetermined that they need to have. So for example, I had my shit together. I had a good job. I owned a condo. I was 34 or 5 at the time, and calm and not dramatic and very, very clear understanding of what I need in a relationship and what I'm looking for. And it boils down to 3 things that I can articulate all the time. And so I think I got cast in the role of somebody who's likely to be going the distance. Right. I think they have these personas, these archetypes of people they're actually casting for. And then I believe they have the storylines loosely mapped out and they're ready to pivot if something better comes along. But they have those built in. What I've heard is that they have each producer has 3 of the men and 3 of the women. And the idea there is that the matches are within there so that the producers can kind of play those sides and push them together because you have regular interactions with your producer. So they're kind of in the matchmaker role, in my opinion, of what's going on. And then I did hear too from, so Danielle and I had different producers, and we had heard from them that when we connected, it wasn't, planned, but they saw it was genuine. So they just backed off and let us do it.
Okay.
So there were other situations where I know producers were egging people towards somebody else or pushing them to insert themselves into certain things. That's not just my season. That's all of them. So I think there's, I say in a sense I got lucky because I didn't have that interference, and I probably wouldn't have
Yeah.
put up with it. I
Yeah.
didn't need I was very clear with the producers most of the time on what I would and wouldn't do. So I think that there's a element of they've pre-matched you, at least in some way, but also there is that element of if something kind of organically happens, like let's see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that I think is fascinating is the drinking. I'm
Oh,
I'm I'm
always
I'm not a
alcohol.
I'm not an anti. I mean, I'll have a good cocktail or a glass of wine here and there, but I was just like, man, these folks are drinking a lot, and I'm seeing a lot of people. Their tongue is getting thicker. It's
Yeah,
like, and you can just tell they're under the influence.
yeah.
And to me, I'm thinking, man, yeah, that might make for good TV, but that is not going to look good on them later.
No. And what?
And
I realized that really quickly when we were there. We had one day because there's almost always alcohol available while the cameras are rolling. That's a big thing. While the cameras are
wow,
rolling, there's always alcohol there. If there wasn't, it got there really quick.
yeah,
But one of the things I realized one of the early days, um, the guys were hanging out, we're ripping shots of tequila, and I started feeling, and that like I'll drink, I'll get drunk, I'll do all that, not all the
sure,
time, but like I started realizing how that one night with all the guys, I was like, well, I'm actually pretty buzzed right now. Thank God it was the end of the night. But
yeah,
I remember right there, I made the conscious effort. I'm like, I will drink very casually, but I am not getting drunk here because
yeah.
you can start to feel, or I started to feel, oh, I could see how this could go way wrong if I'm making decisions because I'm intoxicated the whole freaking time.
Yeah, yeah, and there
So
was
I still
definitely
drank, but much more
sure,
casually.
yeah, yeah, and I could tell some people almost like that was what they were doing to get through the show. I felt like, man, every time
100%.
they're on the camera, they're thick-tongued and their eyes are slow to, when you turn your head and your eyes kind of trail,
Oh yeah.
that drunk look. I'm like, oh gosh, that's not good.
Yep.
That's not good. And I felt, my heart really went out to a lot of them and how they're getting blasted. Uh, especially with this last season, just I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, some people really got blasted and
Yeah. It's so
misrepresented and
unfortunate.
caught. It's like it's almost like the show wanted to teach a few people a lesson. Like, hey, you came here, you already had a girlfriend, you came on the
Which, by the
show.
way, that story is not accurately depicted at all.
Really? That
That
I forget his
story,
even name. What was up with that?
it is it is not my story to tell, but what you see and what you hear on there is not what is actually reality at all.
That was interesting that he even just said, "Hey, can I go?" And I wondered if that was all staged.
At the
But man,
reunion,
yeah, at the reunion, he
that
was
was
there.
that was a much more drawn out experience from my understanding than what you saw there. And it was
Uh,
probably, I would say it sounds like it was much worse than you think. It's so
wow,
unfortunate.
yeah,
It's so unfortunate. I compare it to the Gladiator games now. This is my new thing. I'm a little bit of a history buff. And one of the things that Rome did when the empire started spreading itself too thin, and they had more and more poor people and more people that needed to be like entertained, they started the gladiator games. And at first it was people fighting each other. Then it escalated to people fighting animals. And then they had circuses. And what are circuses full of? Clowns. What do people do? They laugh at clowns, right? Clowns
right,
are, you're laughing at them. You're not laughing with a clown. Like, you're
right,
laughing
right,
at a clown. And so
right.
they did this to entertain people and turn them against each other. So they didn't come together to realize, hey, we've got this empire that's not helping us anymore and not
Yeah,
making sure we have basic needs. And, I look at it and I'm like, wow, reality TV is turning us against each other
it's
in this kind
toxic.
of, it's so toxic. And that's why I can't watch it, especially now, because
Yeah,
it's toxic. And it's, what changed my mind about it was not changed my mind, but like kind of enhanced my belief on it. Dr. Isabel Morley, who's on UCAN, she's also a writer for Psychology Today. She said the problems that she sees here are that these shows are normalizing like bad behaviors, normalizing
yes,
toxic relationships, normalizing people treating each other poorly, normalizing people being cruel. And then they go on the internet after the shows come out and the Love is Blind does it, The Bachelor, and they like put these people and they roast them.
Yeah.
and they perpetuate the storylines. And I am very convinced that they also, I know for a fact that they moderate like Reddit threads and social media, and they amplify up the storylines that they want to push and get people riled up. And they have, paid influencers or
Oh
commentators
yeah.
or content to push the narratives that they want to push. And it's this like coordinated effort to push this stuff and put people out kind of like on the coals in front of everybody. It's like a
Yeah.
public beheading almost.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I just like I said, I don't like reality TV, and the reason I don't like it is the drama and the instigated, forced kind of drama. In other words,
Yes.
it's scripted in an
It's
unscripted
manufactured.
way. Yeah, it's manufactured, right? Like, oh, did you hear so and so said this about you? Well, he didn't fucking say that, but you were
Oh my
told that
God,
he
the
did.
producers
So,
do that. Yes.
yes,
That's
yeah,
such a
you can,
thing.
yeah. It's like it's so obvious. I'm looking at it, going, man, I know that this was a manufactured fucking situation. Because I don't know if I mentioned this even in our texting, but I was casted for the second episode or the second season of Survivor way
Oh
back
my gosh, no,
when.
you didn't.
No, yeah.
That's
So I went to the studio and they casted me, and this is when I was religious, okay? And even then, I remember they called me and they said I'd been selected. They want me to do the show, yada yada. They want me to come in and different. And when I read some of the paperwork, I was like, you know what? They're gonna mischaracterize me. They want me to be this uber religious,
mm,
judgmental guy, and they're gonna misrepresent me. And even at that point, even though I was at that point a Christian, not now, but I was then.
right.
I was pretty. I was I wasn't super conservative, but I was conservative enough that
That they
they
could pull it
could,
out of you.
oh man, they could have really pulled it out of me. And I'm just I thank the earth, Mother Earth, the God, or whatever's out there, that I didn't do it, because it really would have put me, especially out in the world. The Christian world's a very small world. Out in the world, they would have just
Yeah.
blasted me, and
And they would have
so I
gotten
turned it
all of that
down.
out of you. They would have pulled that all out of you.
Yep, yep.
Good
So
for you
I
for having
turned,
the
yeah,
spidey
I turned
sense.
it down. Yep, I just knew that they were going to capitalize on this small little piece of me,
Mm.
and I was
Ugh.
already having doubts and questions of with that, my faith and all that anyway. So I was just so thankful I didn't do it. And then now, on the flip side, watching Love is Blind and watching even The Golden Bachelor and, some of that stuff, it's like, man, what's unfortunate, it's like these are people's real lives,
Yeah.
and people that are watching it are thinking it's real reality TV and making judgments based upon what they're seeing. It's like, you know what? But what you're seeing isn't necessarily the
Not
truth, and
real.
most likely it's not real. Yeah, most likely the judgment that you're feeling and what you're thinking about this person isn't actually real. And but yet they're experiencing that real pushback and criticism and hate and all of
Yeah.
that. And it's it's sad as a person that promotes, I promote happiness, I promote love and joy and peace and all the things that I,
Connection and yeah,
yeah,
you're
all the real shit, all the real
yeah.
shit.
And
And
that's the
so
kind of
yeah,
stuff I think about and push too. And I've really kind of made this a hill that I'm going to stand on and remind people, like, these are human beings just like you, and
yeah,
they're in high pressure environments. They know they signed up to be on a show. They don't know what that's going to actually do to them, the toll that's going to have on them when they're not getting a lot of sleep, they're drunk all the time or drinking all the time. You're making life altering decisions every day on a show like Love is Blind, every single day, multiple times a day for 7 weeks. And it is a pressure cooker, and
yeah,
it is, some people handle it better than others. And there
yeah,
are people that say and do dumb shit, just like you have said and done dumb shit, just like I have
absolutely.
said and done dumb shit before. But you get to do that in your circle, in your
Right.
job, in this, private environment.
No
People on
cameras.
reality TV, right? People on reality TV are doing it in front of the whole world. And
Yeah.
so, I have empathy for them because I know that it isn't easy. And what I
Yeah.
would like for people to do is when they look at someone and they get triggered or they get upset or they see a person on a show that says or does something they disagree with, pause for a minute, because news to you, that's actually about you. That is not about this person that you're watching. And
Yeah.
so if you
Good
can take a
word.
pause and look inside and say, why am I feeling this way right now about somebody that I don't know? Answer that question for yourself. And then there's another part. Well, it's because I feel like I should have had an opportunity to go on the show. I would have handled it better, or I have an ex that said that to me, or whatever it is. And then, well, why are you feeling that way? Well,
Yeah.
because I'm hurt, or whatever that is, right?
Right.
And you realize, if you just ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling that way? Why did I? And you can just go down this like little self journey and really uncover that, what you're feeling about somebody on the TV, or the emotion you're feeling towards someone who's an influencer, or somebody who's left a community that you're a part of, like your case with the Christianity community. And just look at that and be like, well, this is actually about me. You can actually do some growth. And then you can also not hurt somebody else or make somebody else's life harder. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like, everybody's going through it. And I say Santa Claus on a reality show would get haters.
Right.
That's the culture that we live in right now. So,
Yeah.
We learn this in preschool. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Internet bullying among people on reality TV and reality TV fans or spectators or commentators, it's still bullying. It's still internet bullying. You still shouldn't say something about people you don't know if it isn't nice.
Right.
Say nothing at all.
That's, you know what? That's something that it's taken me a while to get there. I mean, like I said, I'm 54, 55 this year, and I finally have come to that realization that, if I don't have anything good to say about somebody, I'm just not going to say it. And if I'm not willing to say it to their face, or at least be curious to find out if there's any legitimacy to it, at this point, it's like I'm just too old to get into other people's business when I don't fucking really know,
That's
especially like Love is Blind. I mean, I'm so aware that I'm watching just a very edited, situation that who knows what the fucking truth is. I mean,
Yeah.
As you're watching it, I literally just giggle. My wife and I will pause it, and I'm like, they're making it look like this, but I wonder what it really is.
And I think that's fun to
is.
do. Like you and your wife bonding over it and speculating. And, I think that's a fun thing to do. But it's when you go and you take it out on somebody you don't know. I'm just like, what is going on?
Exactly.
I've never felt, I shouldn't say that. Like, we've all taken stuff out, but like, I've never felt like I need to go be mean to someone on an internet that isn't a politician. And when I'm being mean to a politician on the internet, by the way, I'm not attacking them as a human. I'm attacking a policy or a stance they have that I disagree with and want them to reconsider. So it's, I'm not going over to like, AOC and, calling her what do they call her? They call her like the crazy, like they try to make her seem like she's crazy. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm saying like, I want you to support this policy, or why are you doing that? So it's not, I'm not even being mean to them, So I have a hard time grasping how people feel the need to do that. But, that's been one of my big takeaways from this whole thing. Like I said earlier, like I had my little circle, and now I have exposure to the whole world that I had kind of like secluded myself from. And I realized people struggle. There's a lot of people really struggling.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people really struggling, and that kind of, it gives, I have empathy for them if they think that's the way to go. I just wish them healing, like I hope that maybe you would say something to someone on the internet before you hear me talk about how it impacts them and how you can think about it differently. And maybe it'll help one person just reflect a little and grow from it. 'Cause it's really sad.
It is, and I believe I really have tried. And again, just like you said earlier, we all have our flaws. We all have our imperfections. We all do stupid shit. But, for the most part, I would say when you're watching any kind of show, especially a reality show, watch it with some grace, watch it with some grace. And if you were in that situation, it'd be tough. I know for me, I like to do Google reviews, but I only do a review if I like it.
Yes.
I don't, unless now, if I found something just crazy and I'm like, you know what, like I need to save people from this, maybe, but I've yet to do that, honestly, because I've
Yeah.
not found anything that egregious. So for me, it's like you're gonna get a Google review from me only if you're fucking awesome.
Yeah, and that's
If you're not, you're not gonna hear from me that you're not awesome. You're just not gonna hear from me.
it's so funny you say that because I actually talked about this on another podcast last night.
Oh,
And we
really?
got into this same conversation, and it was like if someone's your Uber driver and you don't like it, or something like if I don't, or a DoorDash driver or something like that, where someone's doing something like for me that I could do for myself. I have this thing where I'm like, you know what, that guy left my food downstairs, didn't bring it to my door. That guy, I actually don't care about that. That guy, my food never came. That guy was a jerk. Whatever that is,
Right.
instead of like looking, I look at that guy, I'm like, well, this guy is driving for Uber, driving for DoorDash. I would imagine that he's probably economically struggling, and
Yeah.
he is doing this because he has economic stress that is forcing him to maybe work a second job or work this type of job. And you know what? He's allowed to have a bad day. He's allowed to not
Absolutely.
deliver my food. He's allowed
Right.
to, have the windows open in an Uber when it's 100 degrees and humid. I'm just not going to write a
Yeah.
review, and I'm going to move on because
Right.
I
Right.
don't want to punch down, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be like that either. And
Oh, I like
I don't
that.
think we have to be cruel. I think we can choose silence instead of cruelty.
Yeah. So have you had a lot of people, I would imagine, because how I found you was just that you're an advocate for, cast members and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I came across you. And I did actually, I think I watched part of season two. I think I jumped into it later, but anyway,
Okay.
so have you had a lot of former cast members reach out to you, and have you been a support for them? How's that been?
Yeah, so we've had through the UCAN Foundation, and we've had over 100 cast members, and it's not just dating shows; it is cooking shows, it is global. The
It's all
industry has
fucked up.
it's all fucked up. The industry has gone unregulated. They label you as a contractor so that they don't have to follow labor laws, and they can tell you can't be in a union, and they can tell you can't go against the edit. And so they really have these like control mechanisms built in because nobody's ever challenged the system before. And
So you're
people,
like a subcontracted actor with
yeah,
no benefit, no protection,
Nope.
no anything.
Nothing.
And most people would be naive to what it is to be an actor. They don't
It's
know.
crazy.
And so
Yep.
they think, I'm going to be famous. This will be awesome. And then they get on
What could
there.
possibly go wrong?
It's
Yeah.
like, oh, a lot of shit can go wrong. Just watch the fucking show.
Yeah. So we've had over 100 cast members come to the foundation, and here's the thing: like villains, the people that get quote the villain edit, right? Which I also encourage people ask yourself, why is there a villain in every single show all the time, no matter what? Like, because
Interesting.
we are programmed black and white, good and evil, right? So it's interesting to think about that. But we've had
Like
over 100
politics.
casts. Right, exactly. It is.
Listen
It
to them.
is.
We're right. Wrong.
There's no nuance to anything. It's very, very crazy. And
You know
I
what?
think
Total side note, Nick, but it's funny because you said about politics. I find this funny. So I wouldn't say I'm political. I mean, I have opinions about everything, but I'm
We all
not
do.
I'm not a political person. And I find myself, honestly, kind of straddling the middle, which is interesting because I always thought, well, man, I'm kind of could be friends with both sides. No, you fucking cannot.
You can try.
If you're
It is not easy.
If you're not on the right, then the right's gonna fucking hate you. If you're not on the left's gonna fucking hate you. If you're teetering on both sides like a normal fucking human who has nuance,
Both
in
sides
their
punt
thoughts,
you.
it's
You're
just crazy, man. It's like
It is
it's
a
like
hostile
silence.
environment.
When I heard someone say something, they said silence is like aggression, and I'm like, so if I don't say anything about it, I'm like, what?
I got
just
that from so many people on Israel and Gaza because I am politically active. I'm involved in politics. I have been since 2008. It's I'm actually trying to get some presidential candidates on my podcast right now because
Yay!
I want to hear these I want to have like the nuanced conversations, right? And so the fact that it's so black and white, and I do this exercise with my friends. Like, I'm not a Trump supporter. I am entertained by him. I will admit that. The stuff that comes out of that man's mouth and the fact that he's been our president.
Awesome.
Oh my God. Or the videos he posts. I'm like, God, why does this guy have to be so funny? Like, he's so funny. But you go there and I do this exercise with my friends because so many of them just hate Trump, and they probably don't even really know why. They've just been told to, and he's this and this, and I'm not saying he's all these things. But
Sure.
What would happen if, like, your number one issue Trump came out in support of? So, like, I had a dream about this, actually, after talking to my friend about this. And I was like, so let me tell you, what's your number one issue? Well, my number one issue is labor, and I want everybody to make a $20 minimum wage or whatever, right?
Right.
Trump comes out and says, we'll do a $20 minimum wage in my first week of office. I'll pass executive order. I don't think you can executive order that, but you get the point.
Right.
And then that's your number one issue, but you hate Trump. But Biden isn't going to do it.
Right.
So do you support Trump? Or so if not, ask yourself, why do I hate the person more than the policy?
Absolutely.
And ask yourself who's controlling me to feel that way, that now I've turned against what I believe to be true and to be important. And it's been turned into a person.
Yeah.
And it breaks people's brains. It broke mine. I had a dream that this was like 3 days ago now. I had a dream that Trump came out in support of UCAN Foundation and said that reality TV is fake reality, and we're gonna, put regulations in place and laws. And I remember he was
for him.
Well, and I was sitting there, and it was the same day I had this conversation, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, my own brain is trying to wrap around what I would think about all of this. But it is.
Yeah.
You can't have these nuanced conversations, but we're all nuanced. And that's the part that, that's part of the reason I have my podcast. I've had people politically on the right, people politically on the left, people politically in the center talk about politics. I tend to be left, but I have some like libertarian things too, which is, the center thing. It's like we're all in some center between these theories and have, thoughts on what needs to be done and what we should be doing as a society or as a country. And we just need to be able to talk to each other. That's what it is.
I can't agree more. And that's why, I'm not a Fox listener or a CNN listener.
Me neither.
I don't listen to either of those. And I do kind of, it just asked me, right? If you ask me, what do you think about this? I'd say this, and I'd probably be leaning left. What about this? Well, I lean a little right on that. What about this? A little bit of left. It's like it just depends on
You're
what
a human.
is. Yeah. And I'm not simple. I'm complicated, and I have thoughts about everything, and they don't always align with a party. It's like
Agreed.
I'm not right down this line. So that's cool. I know that in real life, I feel like the people I meet out in the real world are more centric or central. And, we always have a few people that we know that they're far crazy right or far crazy left. That they're out there, but most of those folks live online is what I think.
I think so too.
They're not your neighbors.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And then they amplify it in the media. So then you think there's more of these, crazies out there one way or the other. And then they tell you, AOC's a communist. And it's like AOC hasn't done a frickin' thing since she's been in office to move us towards a better society, let alone communism. Like, it's just wild.
It's all reality TV. It's all reality.
It is. Or when they call Biden a radical socialist. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? This guy's been a conservative most of his 500 years in office. Like,
That's right.
It's just crazy. It's wild.
So I know this is not what we're here to talk about, and we don't need to talk about it much
it's
more.
It's fun though.
I'm
fine.
I'm just curious. So for you, like, are we looking at a Biden Trump? That's what it's going to be. Is that what it is?
It is.
I don't follow it close enough to know, but is that it?
It's the rematch absolutely nobody wanted, right? So somehow these parties have managed to lose control on the Republican side and then force Biden on the Democratic side, and it's coming again. And I honestly I don't know what's going to happen, because I think there's RFK Jr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's polling, especially with younger people. He is polling high, and I disagree
Aaron Rodgers is going to be his running mate. Is that
potentially? It's the show continues, right? It's a reality show. So
wow.
It is going to happen. It is going to be Biden and Trump. I'm not 100% convinced it will end that way, because I can see scenario like Biden is not doing well. Like he is struggling. He is mumbling. He is reading off of cards. Like I have concerns that he isn't going to make it, and they're going to have to replace him. And I think that's going to be chaos. Like I think it's just going to be. And here in Chicago is the nomination, the DNC. So the nominating is happening here in Chicago. So we are not a calm city, and I feel like it's going to be a ruckus.
You think Robert Kennedy? Do you think he has? Like, does he have a real shot, or is he going to disrupt it?
So he's definitely disrupting it. It's hard to say, because I don't get my news from CNN or Fox, but I see clips and they just smear this guy as this, and anti-vax and all this crazy shit. And it's like, he's, to me, like my number one issue used to be healthcare, right? Like I've worked on and voted for Obama because of that. I worked on Bernie's campaign and voted for him because of that. My new number one issue is censorship, because I see the censorship is out of control on social media. I'm shadow banned on social media. I'm shadow, like, because I'm taking on big reality TV or something. Like they, it's crazy. Like my content doesn't go anywhere anymore. When people do find it, it's like, how is this not viral? Like I get that all the time from people. And
interesting.
And so this, and that's not why censorship for me. I just think we need to have everybody have a voice, and we have laws to protect against hate speech. And you can, if you support Trump or you support whatever, I want to know why, because I want to find something we agree on and build from that. And I think we can do that. And I think RFK actually, whether he is that or not, that is how he campaigns. I think he's kind of that person where a lot of people look at him like, well, I don't like Biden. I don't like Trump. I didn't want this last time, let alone again. I'm going to do it. And he's polling with more than enough to not just disrupt, especially in swing states, but he's polling like around Ross Perot levels. I was
just going to say, this reminds me of Ross Perot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he's actually building momentum. And whoever his VP is, I don't think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, but I don't know, maybe something went wrong with the Achilles. Again, I don't know. He's looking for a new career. But, I think he has a real chance of it. He's going to disrupt it. I think he has a real chance of us, of disrupting it enough that nobody wins enough electoral college. And I think it's going to be interesting. I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff, but his view on censorship, which is now my number one thing, I'm like, well.
Yeah. I just like his name.
I know. Well, that's the thing.
President Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yeah. He that's what brought him to the race, is his name.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, I've got one more question for you, if it's okay.
All right.
I really enjoyed this, man. I'd love to do it again at some point if you'd be down for that. We could.
Yeah, I actually want to. You should come on my podcast if you're up for it.
Oh, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
You just let me know. Yeah. I guess the question I have for you now is, after the Love is Blind experience, and now I assume you're single, or if you're dating someone, how hard has it been to date post the show?
Yeah.
Because, I would imagine, just like anything, right? Like some women might have the wrong, they've seen you on TV and that's what the attraction is, rather than really liking you or really loving you or all that. So how has dating been? It's kind of like the guy that pulls up in the Bentley is going to be getting more opportunity than the guy that pulls up in the Ford Focus, which is a shame,
Yeah,
but
the
reality
economical
of that.
car.
yeah, exactly. So in that kind of a reality now, with what's gone on with your life, how has that affected your dating, and how's that going?
So it's everything you just said is the thoughts in my mind that are why I'm not dating. Like I don't really know how. And I keep, my therapist is every week we talk about this. She's like, you've got to like get yourself out there. And then I'm like, well, how? Am I going to go on Hinge? Like, could you imagine?
That's the
Am I
one I
going to,
always recommend, though.
I know, well, they have, now they make you pay to see your best matches. So it's like,
Oh,
yeah,
brother.
but yeah. And so I'm like, I'm like, where do I start? And I don't,
Yeah,
it's been winter in Chicago, so I haven't been out as much. I've been kind of busy too, and not
sure.
in the mindset to date, but I just don't really know how. I just don't know
Yeah,
how. Like, am I gonna,
yeah,
I don't really go out to bars very often. Is that like, and when I do, a lot of times it's, a circus,
yeah,
because it's the demo, right? It's the
yeah, yeah.
demographic. So I just don't really know how, or how to like go about it proactively, which is,
Yeah,
it's interesting because that's what, so like I've been thinking like, well, maybe I should get some sort of matchmaker. Maybe I should try something different out of the ordinary. I just don't know what that is yet. I haven't quite pinpointed it.
yeah, yeah.
And I
Well,
still get
man.
people still slide into my DMs, so
Oh,
there's
I
always that
bet. Yeah.
option.
Well, I would imagine that the problem that you're having is not like getting a date. Like, you're a good-looking guy, you're gainfully employed, you're got a public presence. I'm sure getting dates isn't really a problem. It's finding that real true match and someone that loves you for you, like really you, and you're super compatible and all that stuff. That makes a difference. And that's, when
Well,
I work with
it
people,
actually
that's
is
usually it.
it is hard to get dates actually because I don't know how to
Really
I don't know how to go about it. I really don't. And I don't want to
interesting.
do that. I can't do a dating app. I just don't
Yeah,
put myself in situations where I'm doing it. But you are 100% right about the compatibility. And that's one of
yeah,
the things in my head is I'm like, okay, I have been in, relationships where there's fun. And this is the big thing I've told all my friends this forever. Like, I think the key to a relationship, the compatibility piece, but like a level deeper, there are fundamental things that make us who we are.
right.
And you need someone who looks at that and loves that about you. So
Yeah,
like, I had a friend who ended up getting going through a divorce, and I just remember from the time they got married, I was saying like, I don't think she likes these fundamental things about you. Like he's from the South, so he like walks a little bit slower. You know, just there's and that's the stupidest like way to pigeonhole him, but he's just got a different mindset and it wasn't a
yeah,
compatible thing. And like I need someone who's going to
yeah,
look at my like, I'm going to take on demand, I'm going to take on big reality TV, I'm going to try and organize people, I'm going to question everything. I question everything. I don't believe anything that's put in front of me until I can explore it, right? So
yeah,
like someone
yeah,
who likes that about me and enjoys that about me. And when I want to talk about something that I discover or learn that bothers me or that I'm questioning or have a different opinion on, I want someone that's going to be like, I love that about you. I love that you question everything. I
yeah,
love that you are have so much conviction that you're doing the right thing, that you're like putting yourself out there and fighting for a whole group of people in reality TV that don't have rights. Like I want
right.
someone that gets that and loves
Yeah,
that
yeah,
about me, not someone
yeah,
who tolerates that because we have fun or tolerates that because we enjoy doing this together.
yeah, yeah. I personally, I married for the second time. I was married for 25 years, my first marriage. Wonderful person. I don't have anything bad to say about her. We connected clearly over the religious piece and weren't as
Mm.
compatible. Once that wasn't present anymore, we weren't as compatible, even though we made it work and it was good. And we have two beautiful children as a result of it. But now in my second marriage, um, gosh, we're so compatible. We just get along and it's just different. It's just a
Mm.
whole nother experience. And in fact, this is actually what I had always hoped what it would be and what I had dreamed about. Um, so I know it's possible. Like I know that you can meet someone that just gets you and they really are like just a best friend and lover and everything else. And you can just really get along and do life together and have a partner and that's one thing that's made me really turn into my relationship coaching and my matchmaking and,
Mm.
and I date coach a lot too it's just really been something I'm passionate about because I'm like, man, if you if you meet somebody that you're not just attracted to, but you're also compatible with, man, it can be cool. It can be
Yeah.
really cool, and I really desire that for everybody.
I think that's so beautifully said. And, I think too, like the compatibility thing, I don't know that people always understand what that means. And,
Yeah.
one example I'll share is, there were things that that Danielle would do, or, nuances she would have. And I would probably be annoyed if anyone else did them, but she did
Hmm.
them. And I was like, she's so cute.
Yeah.
She's just, and we obviously had compatibility challenges in real life once we got out of that situation. But,
Sure.
there were just things. And to me, it's like, there's all that element of compatibility also is like lowering your guard down and also kind of letting people be themselves. And that I think is something that's really hard to do in relationships, especially when you're just getting started before you get that comfort level.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Well, Nick, man, listen, I've kept you way past the time. I so
Oh, it's my
appreciate
pleasure.
the time. And man, yeah, I'd love to come on your podcast. We can talk about whatever you want. And yeah, just hit me up and we'll make it
I
happen.
will. I'll send you over my booking link and you can just
Okay.
pick a time that works for you.
Okay, awesome. I'd love
Yeah.
it.
Awesome. It was really, really good talking to you, and thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, you bet, man. Peace.
Peace.